Lost in the dark, searching for something more. Then suddenly the world collides with the presence of God, eyes lifted in awe, confronted by holiness, truth, and love. When God reaches down, it's not rejection, it's invitation. Held in his hands, the world finds peace, purpose, and love. This is World Meets God podcast with Jar Campbell. Raw, real, no sugarcoating, just truth and love. Stay blessed. Hey y'all, welcome back to World Meets God podcast with your host Jared Campbell. Um, Today I want to talk about forgiveness, not the kind we quote quickly, not the kind we rush through, but the kind God asks of us while we're still healing. Because forgiveness doesn't always come when we feel ready. Sometimes it comes when we're still hurting, still processing, and still learning how to show up with love. And honestly, if I can be honest, I just want to share what that has looked like for me. Not as someone who has it all figured out, but as someone who is actively walking it out. I think there's this verse in Colossians, and it says, "Bear one another and forgive one another. Forgive as the Lord forgave you." And what stood out to me wasn't the forgiveness part. I mean, it was, but it wasn't. It was honestly the bearing with one another part. Because that assumes process. It assumes tension. It assumes we're all still human, while God is also still working it out. This episode is not going to be about perfection. It's going to be about obedience in the process. Honestly, I've been dealing with a lot. And when I say a lot, I mean a lot. And so, even though I've been dealing with a lot, I know that God has called me to forgive. So, forgiveness came up for me, not because I felt like everything was resolved, because it's not, but because God started checking my heart. Not because about what I felt, but about how I was responding. Because, our feelings are valid. However, our actions, maybe not so much. Romans says, if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. And that part, as far as it depends on you, made me stop in my tracks a little bit. Because I realized, even though I can't control the healing timeline, I can take responsibility for how I respond and my responses. Even when it makes me uncomfortable, even when I don't feel like it. Like, sometimes I genuinely don't feel like forgiving. Like, if I'm being honest, sometimes forgiveness feels like a chore. And it sucks because I feel like it almost invalidates my feelings and makes the other person seem like they're right. And that, I don't know. But what I am learning, this is what I'm learning. I'm learning that I can forgive and still be healing. However, my healing isn't an excuse
to show poor behavior or to treat the next person or even the same person unlovingly. Galatians says each one should carry their own load. And for me, that means owning my reactions, my tone, my heart posture, even when it still hurts. Because heart posture really does go a long way. Seriously, it really does. You'll probably hear me talk about heart posture a lot because it's so important. So I literally just have to be mindful of my reactions, my tone, and my heart posture, even when it still is hurt and I'm still in the forgiving process. Because one thing I'm learning is that God allows me space to heal, but He also still calls me to love well in that space that I'm healing. My pain explains my struggle, but it doesn't excuse my behavior. Yeah. My pain explains my struggle, but it doesn't excuse my behavior. I was going through Luke, and Jesus said something that I feel like we all say, but like actively living it out, yeah, that's something else. Basically in Luke, he says love your enemies and do good to those who hurt you. And that is easier said than done, if we're being honest. And honestly, I don't think that means that we have to pretend that our pain isn't real. Honestly, what I got from that is love isn't based on how we feel. It's based on, love isn't based on how we feel or, if we feel safe or comfortable or, regardless of the case. It's not based on how we feel, but it's more so based on who we belong to. Because God is love and He calls us to love. We're supposed to love one another regardless of anything. We're called to love. And so that's why I feel like it's based on who we belong to, as far as us belonging to God and being like God and, showing people the love of God, the agape love, the unconditional love, the love that isn't based on conditions. I can have a boundary. I can be sad. I can be hurt. I can be whatever and still love you. And it be genuine love because we're called to love. I think in 1 Corinthians it says, love always perseveres. Not always feel good. Not it always feels fair. But it chooses intention anyway. Love is intentional. It's a choice. Love is something you choose. Yeah. And honestly, even though I'm choosing to love and I'm choosing to forgive, I'm also honoring the fact or acknowledging the fact that forgiveness doesn't fix everything. It doesn't erase the hurt. It doesn't erase the hurt overnight. Eventually, with time and God and healing, it will erase the hurt. But it's a process. It's a continuing thing. Sometimes you have to continuously forgive someone. Every time your heart, you feel that offense, you feel that anger, that hurt, that resentment, that bitterness, anything that is less than love, that's when you gotta, God, help me to forgive. God, soften my heart. God, please be with me. Help me to love like you. It's not an overnight process. Forgiveness doesn't make things easy, but it does soften you. It softens your heart, or at least it did for me. It definitely softens my heart. I was also studying, and I want to say it was Psalms 147, I do believe. And it says, God heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. And I realized healing doesn't always mean pretending the wound never existed. It means letting God tend to it without hardening the heart, or hardening my heart. Forgiveness, it didn't change everything around me, but it changed how I showed up, if that makes sense. Like, forgiveness may not have changed how I felt about the situation, but it did change how I responded to the situation. I hope that makes sense. And if I'm being honest, some days I don't always do it perfect. Okay? I am not perfect by any means. George Janice Campbell is not perfect. I am not perfect. I'm not. And I'm not even going to pretend to be. So sometimes I don't always do it right. Sometimes it's a little harder for me. Sometimes I react from my unhealed place, even though I'm supposed to react from a loving place. So yeah, some days I do it better than others, but on every day, obedience is always the goal. Like God says, or Jesus says, like, if you love me, keep my commands. And sometimes obedience doesn't feel like or look like being ready. Like, it doesn't look like feeling ready. It doesn't. I'm trying to figure out how to word it. Like, I don't know, sometimes you don't always feel ready to forgive because it still hurts, and you still feel some type of way about the experience or the encounter or the action, the words, the behavior, and that's understandable. But out of obedience and just walking forgiveness out in real time, sometimes you just gotta choose love anyway. That's literally the goal. So it's not even rushing your healing. It's more so just acknowledging the fact that healing takes time, but love still requires intention. God isn't rushing my healing, but He is shaping my response. So while I'm giving myself grace in the process, I'm also holding myself accountable. I'm also being intentional as far as like trying to love well. There's this verse, and I think I'm pronouncing it right. Micah. I think that's how you say that book of the Bible. And it says, God requires us to act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with Him. The key word is humbly. Humble. We have to humble ourselves before the Lord. And it's but ironically enough, being humble is so humbling. Like, I don't know about y'all, but I literally feel it. Like, it's like a oof. Like, oh, that was humbling. And so, but it's also refreshing to know that I don't have to be perfect. I genuinely just have to be humble. Like, that's literally it. That's all. God isn't calling me to be perfect. He's literally just calling me to actively seek His face in every situation, even when it's hard, even when it don't make sense. Like, literally walking it out in real time, not just saying it. Because there's been times where I literally said, oh, I forgive you, I forgive you. But my heart still wasn't all the way there. I said it because I knew that's what I needed to do. I knew that's the right thing to do. But I didn't feel it in my heart. Like, it was, my heart was still, it had some little stony places in it. I was not, ouch. So it's just, not even trying to rush it, but just giving myself grace in the time about it. Like, it's hard, but it's not impossible. It's not impossible at all. Like, it's doable. Yeah. Yeah. So, I guess if you're in a season where you need to forgive, you have some things that you haven't healed from, need healing from, you have offense in your heart, it's not to say to try to be perfect, but basically just ask God what obedience looks like today. Not forever, because it's a daily thing. Daily surrenderance. A daily surrenderance. Dying to our flesh daily. So, yeah. Because sometimes the bravest thing we can do is literally just choose love while we're still healing. That's it. That's all. So, yeah. And again, if this has helped you in some way, shape, or form, resonated with you in some way, like it, love it, share it with someone else so it helps them as well. And until next time, y'all stay blessed. Love y'all.